Hi guys, it's Kirsty. Today I'm going to talk about the common irrational beliefs that fuel the relationship OCD cycle and how we can go about identifying the irrational beliefs that fuel it and start disputing them to change them into more rational beliefs in order to bring down our fear surrounding the subject. But firstly, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the button below in order to keep up to date with new videos as they're released. So I've noticed a lot of people asking about how to dispute irrational beliefs in the Facebook group, and it's not a big surprise because it's a new concept, firstly, to a lot of us when we start to learn about OCD recovery, and it's hard enough as it is identifying exactly what it is that's fueling the fear cycle, and quite often we can find ourselves getting a little bit stuck just trying to identify what our fear is, because we think if I can just identify what my particular fear is and start becoming more rational about it, then I can start feeling a bit better. But the thing is, there's quite often a couple of different kind of fears that would be fueling the relationship OCD fear cycle. So for example, one fear could be losing the relationship, which is what got the cycle latched on initially, because you didn't want to end the relationship, but you couldn't stop thinking things that made you feel like you should end the relationship. The next one might be alongside this be making a mistake, because you have certain beliefs about how you should feel in a relationship, and because you don't feel exactly like that all the time, you think that you need to end the relationship. So that fear could be choosing to stay, but that being a mistake, so therefore you're making the wrong choice and you're going to be missing out on living your best and most authentic life, or whatever it might be. But the fear is staying in the relationship when perhaps you shouldn't be. And another fear is, if I stay or if I go, either way, I feel like I'm just going to be stuck like this forever. So it's the fear of fear that's also fueling it. So unless I leave this relationship, I'm always just going to feel stuck in this cycle of not knowing and just being really uncomfortable. I don't want to leave, but if I stay, I'm just going to feel stuck like this all the time, and I can't go on like this. And I'm scared to continue feeling like this. So it's kind of, with relationship OCD, it's that you need to be disputing from each of these angles, because there's probably a bit of all three that are fueling it. And the same applies for other themes as well. Sometimes there's a couple of different angles that you need to approach it from. So, there's this fear of losing people that we love, and that's what fuels part of relationship OCD and various other themes. There's fear of making mistakes and not living our best, not being our truest selves and living our best life. So there's that fear, and being authentic and all of that. And then there's the fear of being stuck, which none of us want. So, naturally OCD can latch onto that as well. So firstly, if we start disputing the fear of losing that relationship, so, are you afraid, are you having breakup urges where you feel like you're suddenly just going to blurt it out and end the relationship? Or are you afraid that perhaps your behaviour with your OCD is going to push your partner away? You're just terrified of losing a relationship. So here, the irrational belief may be along the lines of, it would be awful if I was to lose this relationship because of OCD, or because of these thoughts that I'm having. I desperately don't want to lose this relationship. I must not lose this relationship. So what we're saying is that by saying it would be awful if you were to lose the relationship because of this, you're saying that that's the worst thing that could possibly happen, when obviously when you step back and look at it, OCD makes you feel like whatever you're thinking about is the worst thing, because it sets the high alerts going in your brain. But when you step back and look at it, it's not the worst thing. There are lots of worse things than a relationship ending, but relationships ending is sad, and it's difficult, and it can be a huge inconvenience as well if you live together, or if you have children together or anything. But somebody could die, and that's worse than that. Or or somebody could be kidnapped. You know, there's so many other things. So if you start looking at that and bringing it down levels, firstly, sort of on the wider spectrum, you could look at it like that. Then you could start to look at, you know, if I continue to hold on to this belief that it would be awful, what does it get me? So it gets you locked on anxiety, unable to kind of feel happy in moments that you'd like to feel happy in, unable to relax, unable to be in the moment with your partner, perhaps sexual dysfunction, unable to enjoy when you're away from, you know, time with your friends because you're constantly thinking. So you start to look at what are the negatives of holding on to that belief, holding on so tightly to that it would be awful and that you couldn't stand it. And then you can start to see that it's not helpful to you to hold that irrational belief. And then what it would be good to do is to start looking at what a new belief, more rational belief would be. And in this case, it could be, I would strongly prefer to stay in this relationship, which I feel is good, but I could stand it if it ended. And here you can start sort of listing out reasons why you could stand it and why it wouldn't be awful if it ended. So, you know, what could you still do if you lost the relationship? You know, would you perhaps be able to decorate your house how you would want to decorate it? And it might feel harsh looking at it like this, and it might feel scary because you're like, but what if it makes me want to leave? You have to take these risks. If you want to get better and, you know, start feeling better and functioning better individually and as part of the relationship, you need to be willing to take these risks. So start listing, would you decorate your house differently? Would you spend more time with your friends? Would you take up new hobbies? You'd have more time to do this, that and the other. And, you know, the relationship might be amazing, but no relationship is perfect. So you could think, well, you know, maybe you'd get to have the honeymoon period with somebody again and things like that. So start listing it. And, you know, therefore, it's not all absolutely awful. Yes, it would be very sad and nobody wants sadness, but you know that sadness wouldn't last forever. If you can list things that aren't awful about the situation, then you can start proving your irrational belief wrong and start believing the more rational belief. Then you can start looking at what you can gain from letting go of the irrational belief and going with the more rational belief. So you've given given a list of reasons why holding on to the irrational belief isn't helpful. You've given a list of reasons why the irrational belief isn't actually true scientifically. You've given an alternative belief. Now you need to give your mind more reasons to believe in this alternative belief. So I would strongly like to not lose this relationship, but if I did, my world wouldn't crumble and I would be okay. So you need to give your brain reasons to start believing in this. So what would you gain from changing the belief? So you could start with some things like you'd be able to feel more relaxed around your partner. Maybe you'd be a better partner because you'd find it easier to listen to your partner and chat to them without all the background noise in your brain. It might be that sex, you stop avoiding sex perhaps, or you have a better sex life because you're able to be in the moment more. It might be that you enjoy time with your friends more because you don't have all the background noise going on about your relationship. So start thinking about all the things that you could gain, how much is holding you back, holding on to the irrational belief, because then you're giving your kind of mind and your subconscious reasons to change its ways. And while you're doing all of this, obviously you need to be reducing compulsions, because if you're showing yourself that it's not awful if you lose a relationship, you're practicing being less afraid of it. You need to act in accordance with that as well. So, you know, Don't try and control everything in the relationship. Don't ask your partner for reassurance. Stop Googling, stop asking your friends for reassurance. So stop doing the compulsions and aim to try to reduce how much you're ruminating. As we said in quite a few of the videos, so a lot of ruminating and mental compulsions can become automatic over time, especially when the fear levels are so high. But once you start disputing the irrational beliefs, your fear levels come down and you'll start to notice that you can choose to not ruminate as much. So try not to get involved with the rumination when it goes on. So the next thing that might be driving the relationship OCD cycle might be the fear of doing the wrong thing and staying. And this might be because you have some irrational beliefs about how you should feel in a relationship. So you might be thinking, it's awful that I don't feel love for my partner all the time, therefore the relationship is completely wrong and I must leave. So what you're doing here is when you're saying things like, it's awful that I don't feel this way and I should feel this way and I must leave if I don't feel this way, it's really, really unhelpful. I mean, you can't control how you feel at all times, and I'm pretty sure that people who don't have OCD aren't constantly monitoring how they feel in their relationship and probably don't worry if they have a day when they're feeling numb towards their partner. So here it's kind of, you know, alongside changing the irrational belief here, it's practicing where you can, reducing how much you're checking your emotions and how you're feeling, and asking for reassurance about how you're feeling. Again, you need to start supporting a new, more realistic belief. So ideally I'd like to feel more in love with my partner if I'm to stay in the relationship, but it's not awful if I choose to stay in the relationship even though I don't feel the way I would like to feel. So you want to start changing the irrational belief that says shoulds, must feel a certain way or else it's awful. You want to change that to, ideally I would like to feel in love with my partner more, or I'd like to feel more aroused around my partner or more excited around my partner. But if I don't all the time, it's not awful and I don't need to leave the relationship, and that doesn't make me awful for not leaving the relationship just because I don't feel this way all the time. So again, it's approaching it in the same way. It's like, you know, what is it taking from me while I hold on to this irrational belief about how I should feel? And it's the same kind of things. It's being in the moment, you know, happiness, your concentration at work, maybe being in the moment with your partner, feeling relaxed, all these things. And then it's looking at how you can benefit from, you know, how you can benefit from changing. So again, it's the same, being more in the moment, a reduction in maybe how anxious you feel, enjoying yourself more with your partner. And you can give reasons as to why your irrational beliefs are not true, because the world hasn't swallowed you up. You've been feeling like this for quite some time, still sticking around in your relationship. So you can start to argue, well, you know, the world hasn't ended and I haven't been feeling much towards my partner the last few weeks, but I don't want to leave them because I think overall it's a decent relationship. Just because I can't say for certain either way, it doesn't make me or the relationship awful. You know, I can stand it. So, you know, once you start to bring the levels down, again, the fear surrounding, you know, am I missing out on something more amazing because I don't feel the right way here? You're not doing yourself any favour by saying you must feel a certain way, because all it's doing is making you feel unhappy, and you can choose to change that belief and make yourself feel happier, because your choice is that you'd rather stay, otherwise you wouldn't be stuck on it. And you know, you need to start changing your belief to go in line with how you want to live your life, not how you think you should live your life, or how Hollywood says you should live your life, or society, or anything like that. You should make the rules about how you get to live your life. And if you feel like you're being bad because you're doing your partner a disservice because you don't feel a certain way, you're the one that's suffering here, not your partner. You know, your partner's not the one that's, you know, constantly ruminating about how they should feel, beating themselves up for not feeling the right way and things like that. You're the one doing that to yourself. You're the one that's suffering. So you're the one that can change that suffering as well and make the choice to start working on thinking more rationally about it and not letting society or films or novels or whatever dictate the right feelings that you should be feeling, because you're a human being. So with the fear of, am I doing the right thing by staying because I don't feel the right way, etc. So that's the disputing of, feeling the right way. What if I stay and it turns out to be a mistake? Okay, so what is so awful about this? So it might be that you go back and, I've wasted my time, I've wasted my partner's time. So your partner chooses to be with you. Your partner can walk away whenever they want. That's up to them. Okay, so you're not forcing them to stay with you, firstly. Secondly, in terms of wasting time, sometimes it takes time to realize things, and it's not always the best thing to run away from something immediately. Sometimes there can be phases that aren't as good, this, and even non-OCD related, there can be phases that aren't quite so good, but people choose to stick around because overall they know it's good and they feel like they can work through that. So it might be that you're doing that, and even if something did end, doesn't make it not worthwhile. If it was something that felt important to you at the time, why is it so awful if it ends? Does it really make it a mistake? So you can really start to think about, okay, is it actually a mistake though? If I choose not to leave the relationship straight away because I suspect it might be out of fear, is it really so awful if later on down the line I think I do want to leave the relationship and I do? Okay, just because something hasn't worked out and it's not 100% right to the very end of, for eternity, and it doesn't last your whole life, it doesn't mean that it was a mistake being a part of it. I don't mean to sound cheesy, but you can learn a lot from every relationship you're in. And also, even if you did make a mistake, why can't you make a mistake? So this is another thing that's included in the work of Albert Ellis in terms of the disputing of beliefs is, we're fallible human beings, each and every one of us. We're all capable of getting things right and wrong sometimes. So this is where the self-acceptance piece comes in, and you want to practice accepting yourself. Maybe you are making a mistake. Is it really so awful if you are? Maybe there is something better out there for you. Maybe you'll find that someday, maybe you won't, but it's really not awful, the situation that you're in right now, and you really don't want to be making any decisions out of fear. So right now, you don't want to be running away from this relationship, because that's compulsive, and that's a quick fix. And the last thing we want is quick fixes with OCD. So that moves on to the next fear, which is the fear of fear. So it's I need to get away from this because I'll be stuck like this forever otherwise, just feeling like this, and I couldn't stand it if I am. So here you want to this is where you want to start showing yourself that you can tolerate OCD symptoms in the meantime, while you're gradually working on doing your exposures and changing your rational beliefs. No quick fixes here. So this is where you're backing up the belief that you're changing the belief that I can't stand feeling like this. You want to change that to, ideally, I want to improve my OCD symptoms, or ideally, I want to be not feeling stuck the way I feel stuck right now. But I could stand it if I can't change that. It would be much better for me, and I will continue to work towards not being stuck. But if I still am stuck, I can stand it. And you can immediately prove that new rational belief correct by saying, I've stood it to this point. I stood it when it was at its very worst and I couldn't sleep. I got through that. So if I can get through it at that point, I can get through it at this point. So if you got through like your very worst point with OCD, when you couldn't sleep and you didn't have an appetite and you maybe weren't able to work, if you're back at work now and all of that, then yeah, so you've already improved the situation a bit, and you have stood it, and you got through those worst bits. So of course you can get through this bit in the meantime while you're working on your recovery, and you can start showing yourself every day, giving evidence for the fact that you can stand it and that it's not awful. But even if you don't enjoy the things that you and your partner do together because you're still struggling badly with the relationship obsessions, still do the things, still go on your date nights, still have sex, still spend time together, still spend time apart. the things that you would do anyway, even if you don't feel like your heart's in it, just do it, because that way you're not depriving yourself of doing things. And you might find, like, one of those occasions, you might find a minute where you actually forget and you might have fun for a moment, you know. And think about, if you have a nice meal, think, okay, I still got some enjoyment out of this meal, it's not awful. And if you did a workout one day, oh, I did a workout and I feel quite good about myself. So make the effort to acknowledge these things, because all of that is evidence against the irrational belief that you can't stand feeling stuck like this. So, you know, again, you have to give like reasons. What can I gain from feeling, you know, from believing, from changing the belief to I can stand feeling stuck with my OCD like this. So, you can say, okay, even though if I feel anxious and I'm having obsessions, I might not feel quite so upset about it if I can change the belief. So maybe I won't feel as down. So things like that. And, you know, maybe I'll feel more motivated to do more things with my partner, and maybe I'll feel more motivated to work out or cook a nice meal or do some gardening or whatever it might be, go for a walk with my friends, because I'm not beating myself up over the fact that I'm still struggling with my OCD. So it's really all about giving your mind reasons to take on the new belief. So your mind thinks it's keeping you safe by holding on, you know, by giving you these obsessions because of the irrational belief. So you need to give your mind a very good reason to change the way it's behaving, and you need to lead the way by living in line with the new irrational belief. Even before you start truly believing the new rational belief, you need to be living in line with that. So not doing the compulsions where you can, not avoiding, and, you know, like making sure that you are doing the things that you want to do. So I hope this has helped a little bit. I know it can be quite confusing because there's different ways of disputing irrational beliefs, and like I said, it can be a couple of irrational beliefs fueling a particular cycle, a particular theme, and this is why sometimes it needs to be tackled from a couple of different angles, and it doesn't need to necessarily be at the same time. You might spend, you know, a while just working through the reducing the fear of losing the relationship overall, and then it might be that you want to start, because perhaps the thoughts might change, or, you know, but what if there is something better out there? I no longer feel anxious about the idea of leaving. Does that mean that, you know, maybe I want to leave? And that's when it comes in, okay, but I'm not going to leave. So now I need to start looking at the irrational beliefs around how I should feel. Because if once the anxiety reduces, then you're like, oh God, but I feel really numb and that's really bad. And that's when you need to start thinking about, okay, so why is it awful if I stick around then? Because it's not awful. And that's when that comes in. And then it might be after a while that it's still sticking, but you're like, but I no longer feel afraid of like losing a relationship. I also no longer feel as bothered about, you know, taking a risk by staying in a relationship. So what's keeping me stuck? And then it might be that it's the fear of fear, and that's when you start to look at, you know, I can stand living feeling this stuck. And, you know, so you see how it can, you know, your OCD can change very slightly, and that's because there might be a couple of different fears fueling that particular theme. But I hope this video has been useful for you if you are struggling with relationship OCD, and this can help you maybe with some of your disputing, and I think some of it is applicable if you're having obsessions around your sexuality as well, because, you know, it might be about losing your current relationship or, you know, living your best life and things. So anyway, thank you ever so much for watching, and take care.